Okay, up to the secrets and all that. The Crusaders are choosing to do an assault again. The Muslims, unaware of this, picked Army of Egypt and split their points 3-3. Crusader tunnels. I decided to make a quick launch for the prison, I think it was. You can see I stopped after only, it turned out, one hex. I got a block, so I lost 2 points there because I was trying to just rush to it. I figured, well, I got a shot at that. My last assault didn't go too badly. What if I wasn't pressured? I think I had a shot at it. Well, the problem with that, of course, is the Crusader armies are weaker now, overall. Now, yes, I have a higher proportion on here by far, and maybe even a stronger overall attack. And given that it wasn't the full army attacking by the Muslims, I think I still got a shot. Anyway, I randomized where the Muslims will do their searches, and they picked one way down here. Kind of unlikely. I didn't chart that one out exactly as to what hex, because there's nothing there. Obviously, if I was actually playing, I would be calling out a hex. But the other two are along here, actually quite close to the prison, in the area that the Crusaders were going for. And they missed, though, mainly because the Crusaders screwed up. Had the Crusaders succeeded, I would have hit them, actually. So, you know, sometimes weird things happen. And I think we jump over now. We missed the bombardment and repair, which means still the Muslims wasted 3 repair points. Of course, the Crusaders don't get to wreck the walls anymore. And we go right into the assault phase. Now, what's interesting here is that the Crusaders don't know what the Muslims picked, because the Crusaders chose to do an assault, and that's announced first. So I don't have to reveal what army I'm bringing on. I'm going to obviously bring on the Army of Egypt probably pretty quickly, but I could be withholding other things in the case of a Saladin attacks pick here, and try to build a false sense of security. Last time that wouldn't have worked, because the whole assault procedure was triggered by the Muslims making their assault. All right. I missed in all of this was during the regrouping phase when these pair-offs were done, I should have been unfilling Foss hexes. Now, these aren't guarantees. They only happen on a 1 through 4. But yeah, I've got to roll a bunch of dice now. I'm not going to go back and try to redo the rest of the early part of this turn. I'm still going to launch that assault. But basically, on a 1 through 4, each one is removed. And, well, I guess the point is, it doesn't really matter what you have there. I mean, part of my intention had been, oh, look at all those filled Foss hexes. I want to keep attacking. But there's a good chance that everything, or much of it, gets cleared up. It's not that big an expense, though. It's just the Crusaders have to stand there for an extra turn to fill the Foss, or they could go in it. But I don't generally like to do that. It's just, first of all, you can't use your siege towers if you go in it. And secondly, if you're doing the ladder assault, you undergo a more dangerous fire procedure. So we see a few of them still remain filled, but not many. But that's a slight advantage, because next turn there'll be even less. So, you know, launching the attack now, launching an attack on one turn and filling the Foss almost makes you want to keep doing it each turn. That was a big part of actually why I went ahead with the attack, was I had so many Foss things filled. Had I seen what was removed, I might not have, because obviously I'm going to have to go through a significant effort. I also might have positioned my assault towers differently, but such is life. One of many kind of not terribly easy decisions to make for the Muslims comes to mind, which is that, and I may have brought this up again, I know I repeat myself a lot, is that decision of where to spend your engineering points. If you know there's going to, I think I did to some extent, if you know there's going to be an assault, which is, if you choose this, you can throw everything into tunnel discovery. But if you don't know there's going to be an assault, but you think it's likely, anything you spend on wall repair is wasted. On the other hand, you don't really want to find out that you could have repaired the walls and all you ended up doing was hunting for tunnels. Maybe. Right now the Muslims are pretty much nervous as hell because they're not finding anything. They've had one wall collapsed and they have not found any tunnels. They've been allocating a decent amount of their points. And that just perpetuates this feeling of, well, maybe they're gathering, all just right outside my range. And then one after another, they're going to go zipping in and I'm going to have real trouble finding them. And that's actually a good strategy, is to position your tunnel at 4 hexes. And then maybe build another tunnel up to 4 hexes and another one up to 4 hexes. And then try to collapse a bunch of walls in fairly fast order. What you don't want to do is leave a bunch of tunnels sitting inside the 3 hex range, because those will get found eventually, just by the nature of the search procedure, I think. Probably easier if you're not randomizing the whole damn thing. I just can't stop chattering. Actually, it has to do with something that's loading, but I don't think I have time to start playing my assault. The randomizing isn't necessarily that terrible, though. So think about this situation. Where I launched right next to the wall, that's always somewhat effective, because those are dangerous target places. But just because I searched a location doesn't mean I don't want to search it again, even on the very next turn, because the fact that I searched it makes it maybe more attractive to the Crusader player to go there. So if I were playing in a 2-player game, I might say, he searched pretty hard for me in this area. I'll try to slip my tunnel in through there. And of course, your opponent's aware that it all becomes a game of Rochambeau in terms of, but with a lot of spaces to play with. It's not like a game of Battleship where you can like chuck something and say, well, we know we're good there. No, it's more like Midway when I played that, in the sense that he searched pretty heavily in that area. I think I can hide in that area because he's not going to look for me. Well, you might be aware of that same kind of thinking. I like that kind of aspect. I like games where there's this little guesswork hidden thing going on. What I'm not as impressed with, although it has the same kind of thing, is kind of like the chit selection in, say, Empires in Arms, or even Whiff has it to some extent, where you pick a tactic and it just really comes out to be, okay, one tactic beats another, one beats another. There's more than just a single event in play. So, I'm not just picking a tactic for this one event. What I'm doing is physically constrained by certain actions, but my knowledge of where you searched can affect where I end up digging next. So it's not just a matter of, he threw rock last time, I bet he won't throw a rock again, so he thinks I'll throw paper, so I'll throw scissors. That kind of little looping doesn't make any sense to me, and that's what you really get a lot of ways in Empires in Arms. Usually there's a couple of good choices. Which one is he taking in this particular circumstance? And a couple of ridiculous choices that you can immediately eliminate. No, in this, you have some constraints on what he's going to do, but you also are influenced by the prior choices because of those constraints. The fact that I searched this area and didn't find anything in a 2-player game would kind of cause me to think, Well, maybe he's just not there. Maybe he's somewhere else completely. Maybe that's not where he's devoting his energies. And maybe I'll come back next turn somewhere else, but then the turn after that I'll search here in case he's there now, in case he works his way there. But that one turn halt could be enough if he positions himself 3 hexes away. Well, 4 hexes away out here. Now 1, 2, 3, 4. If he gets all his build rolls, he gets in there and bang, he's free. And if I give him one free turn to do that, that's what happens. Okay, so the Crusader assault begins. They've moved up into position once again. Launch attacks on wherever they can find weaknesses, whatever. Putting archers where we can. I'm trying to find them like here. To the front. They're crossbowmen. To try to knock people off the walls or whatever. They're very effective at that. They can even... Well, they're not going to get a kill against a wall position, although they might when they're on top of a siege tower. And everything else I left the same because I may have kind of cheated. Yeah, that's a reason not to change things. No, I may have cheated, so I would have had to move them anyhow at this point with the positioning of some of these cav units. So, for example, this one is a Kingdom of Jerusalem 2. He had to be within 4 hexes of Geoffrey there. But I certainly could have gotten everyone to the positions they're in. And I don't want to break things before the Muslims move. And then the army of Egypt has come in over here with the idea being that the Bretons are the fastest stuff. So they're probably the thing I most want to hit. One, maybe to kill them, but more importantly, because everything else will take a while to get there. Of course, the cav is going to be able to represent its way over there, but they're not terribly strong. They're only the same as other men-at-arms. They just are more lightly armored so that they can move a little more quickly or whatever. So, I don't know if it may be a little dense there. But I'm also far away from the catapult and the ballista that are remaining, which means I'm not going to face those additional problems. Hitting Kingdom of Jerusalem might have been a good idea instead. It's just there's no target over here for me, except maybe trying to run to the walls of Acre or disrupt the attack itself. Over here there's a potential target, which is these bases, the tunnel bases back here. Also, the assault line is at its weakest. Not much is possible in the first round. I did some fire combat, but it really has very little effect. A couple of retreats happened. That's about the extent of it. Like this guy ran back here, this guy back here. Which will kind of disrupt things a little bit, but for the most part, the Crusaders, except where they have, say, a crossbow and a tower, aren't going to be able to hurt anything, because they have the -1 against them, so they can force units back, but that doesn't do much. And the Muslims can't really do a whole lot either, except push things. To finish the second impulse, you can see the Egyptian army is beginning to make some headway against those Bretons, and I have to be careful. I have to make sure to get more forces into play. I've thrown some cav in, etc., but it's not going terribly well. I think it was actually a death. This guy there. We also had some Crusader deaths on the attack, actually. But we got some more Foss villains. And, well, our kind of hope is to win it on this. I don't know how likely that is, though. And if we don't win it here, chances are we're going to take more losses proportionally than what the Muslims do. The only question really comes down to how many losses before things start looking really ugly. That's always kind of the issue for the Crusaders. Is they've taken some decent losses already. Now, it's not as obvious, but the Muslims have taken more. Their assault and attempt to win actually cost them quite a bit. more than the distraction. You know, normally these attacks are meant as sort of a distraction. Maybe it's best to launch them when the Crusader is attacking so that you can start something, get them to shift forces over as need be, and then hit hard with the rest. But, man, obviously that couldn't happen last time, and this time it isn't going to happen. Man, 3 casualties are beginning to rack up, and there's not a lot being gained anywhere. Kind of forgetting about the holes in the wall, not really dealing with them. I don't think it's had an effect because these guys made it up their ladder, which is kind of surprising. They all made it up, all these Germans. And here, I made the attack out of there and I didn't make it in. That would have been normal. I don't know why I have the siege tower there particularly. But what has been happening is the poor Egyptian army's lost a couple of leaders and they're getting kind of hammered down here. It's one of the problems with the... oh boy. I'm realizing I'm not going to have a good count here because I've got additional losses here. Now, the guys in the bag count is 2 each. So I'll just have to recount each time. I guess that's the only way I can take care of it. Because... I don't know, I think I've lost 2 new units since then, but, you know. We were at something like 14 or something. Yeah. So, we've got to worry about that morale issue because that ends up giving a +1. That may be the way that the Crusaders can get through the line here. Anyway. Not making a lot of progress. We're filling the fosse in again, but the walls just are too tough right now, and there's too many defenders. And there isn't a lot that you can do about that, unfortunately. The only thing you can do about it is commit more of this force, really. The Crusaders have lost so much already that it looks like they're having a real tough time moving here. Of course, you know, wiping some of these guys out would be good. I may choose just not to attack with them, to pull back and maintain a threat level of some sort or another. I don't know. Because it does not look like I'm utilizing my forces well. You know, guy here in the ditch got wiped out. I think the guy over here got wiped out. I lost two full strength infantry units. They're all full strength on that side. Only in the city do they ever get. The garrison goes to half strength. Well, this was another impulse and another kind of boring exercise in die rolling when it came down to it. Just not getting any traction here. It's not that the board is particularly tougher to cut through than it was last time. You know, it's the same units, and I've got if anything, maybe a heavier attack going on. But I'm just not getting any motion anywhere. In part, I think I had a little bit more committed down here, so this is now denser. But that doesn't mean much, except that I've got all my archers over here. I think the other time I had my archers more over here. And these archers are just driving the Crusaders back. And I'm just not getting any traction over here either. So I just don't know. Maybe I have less bowmen, less crossbowmen up there. But I got to start considering pushing some of these other commands forward. It doesn't look like Saladin's coming in. Now this is where, of course, if he is coming in, why you'd hold him back. But having done an assault, I kind of wanted to succeed, so I need to get some of my firepower up there. A little something, a little bit of good news. The Crusaders ended up taking that space from their siege tower. That may be the beginning of a collapse over there. Basically, as long as the wall kind of holds up, it's really hard to gain purchase. But once you start grabbing pieces, then it becomes just a little bit easier. I'm no longer facing, well, I'm still facing doubled strength, but I'm doubled as well, so it's harder to knock me off the wall. I get some defenses against the archery, etc. And it just works out much, much, much more easily. Plus now I have a zone of control. So with only one space, it's not so good. What I had before with a couple of spaces is what allowed me to kind of spread that and then leave an opening to drive through. Over here, you know, I don't know why the Muslims are even attacking. They're not gaining anywhere, but they're not losing anything either, which is great because they're totally outmatched over there. There's not a whole hell of a lot I can do with the Crusaders except note that, gee, I could go with a little bit of a weaker setup. Now, what do I have that I could give up? I don't know. Maybe I could trade one of the heavier units, like Philip's unit, for something a little smaller next time. But can't go too small. Can't go to like the Templars. We're down to one piece. The 6 of these, a whole lot of nothing going on. And you know, it just, I don't know why it was working so well in the last assaults, but these archers here are just driving me back. And you know, I think I had a preponderance of archers on this side where there weren't many troops attacking, and last time the troops were just streaming in. Now I'm just not able to get a purchase on there. I've got the one guy on the wall, and he's got, you know, almost no chance, actually. I have to shoot something before I can hurt something. So if this guy was damaged, but he's unfortunately in one of the nice towers that gives him a -2 to the die roll instead of -1 for firepower. And then this guy's in a breach. He's got King Richard and 2 Englishmen facing him, but he has enough archery and the artillery fire that we were able to knock out, you know, one of those units, so the other one didn't really have a chance. And I didn't have enough fire coming in to actually take him down. It could happen, it might not. He could even be retreated from there with two crossbowmen firing at him, but it didn't happen. And there haven't been breaks like that. Basically, that's what's killing. That's what's killing the assault. Knock somebody off the wall, but the Crusader is knocked off in response. Anyway, that's through 6 of the 10. Over here, the Egyptian army started pulling back. They've decided they can't do anything, but they can kind of stay there. If the French decide to pull some of their troops back towards the city, well, then I'll attack. But as long as they're willing to commit a significant amount of their force to keeping me in check, I don't see a reason to do anything. And there isn't really enough time for these others. What do I have? 4 turns. 4 times 4 is 16 movement points. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Just barely enough time to make it to the walls. I wish they had used their second attack. If they had, I'd have swept everything off as soon as one of them came on. We move into the 8th out of 10 impulses. There's a couple interesting things. You see a couple of these breached hexes have been cleared. Now that's the archers that cleared them, but because the Crusaders get to move first, they'll be able to move into those spaces. We're starting to get a powerful little emplacement into there. I don't know how valuable it's going to be, whether it's going to be enough at this point. I've only got 3 more activities, but I certainly have enough troops that if I can start punching holes into the wall, I'll have a shot at things. And if I don't know. I've got Kingdom of Jerusalem, Guy's forces. I got Walter's Norman forces. Just taking kind of their crossbowmen. Might be arbalisters, given the situation, but I'm trying to get them up. They move a little more quickly, and see if I can maybe get, you know, 1 round or 2 rounds of fire in with those extra crossbows. That will be that would be a potent change to things. We also lost a unit from here because it had nowhere to retreat to. Was it from there? No, from this one. He had nowhere he could retreat to because, well, he actually could have gone this way. He's not lost. Yes, he is. He can't go through the zone. Those don't get canceled out for retreats. So, yeah. And that would have been kind of goofy, running off the castle or whatever. But that's another full garrison unit down. And the garrison can't afford to lose units. That's the problem. Well, no gains on turn 8. No big losses except Geoffrey was thrown back, which definitely hindered things a bit since I was counting on the Jerusalem troops to punch the hole through. But now things look more solid for the Muslims, mainly after their move. You can see where we sleeved into some locations and cut this poor thing off. But it can still fire and cause tons of problems. Now, here's one thing. At the end of the scenario, remember, at the end of the assault, there's this isolation phase where if this guy can't trace back into the city, he'll be captured and hauled off, along with the artillery, I guess. And that's a problem, right? They can't, they don't want to lose a unit, but, well, at least the Crusaders will walk away with something out of this if they get him out of there, but otherwise, there's very little going on here of value. Now, he could currently trace through up to here. He could also trace around this way. So unless somebody goes out of their way to stop him, he will escape somehow. Well, I lied about that isolation issue here. He's not going to have to face that. Garrison is immune to isolation. No matter what you do with them, you could send them out on a sortie and get them caught someplace, and they're still immune, which I think is a little extreme, but okay. So after 10 rounds, this is what we've got. Basically nothing new happened except some more Crusader stuff. Some English, whatever, died. So I've got to do the pair-offs. Outside of that, very, very little effective. Yes, you know, at the end, when you're facing something like this with Richard and Garnier here, they each have, I think, 12 strength points. So they could get like a 4-1 on this, right? But then they'll be at -3. 4-1 at -3 doesn't do anything of any importance. And that's really what came across here was all the attacks that I kept being able to make. The positioning of the Muslim archers was such in response to what I did, but the archers are much more powerful than the infantry. They basically can stop the attack in its tracks. And I'm not quite sure how to defeat that, because it doesn't really matter too much what I have. I mean, you could say, well, you haven't knocked down many walls. Yeah, the walls don't do too much there. They provide some defensive benefits so that I can't kill the archers with my own crossbows at range 2. I could, of course, use the towers and try to wipe out the crossbows. I think that's where I'm going to have to go. I don't have a whole hell of a lot of turns left. And my feeling is I almost have to attrition them. Anyway, it's time to clean this one up and set up for a new one. And oh boy, I'm tired. So I think that'll be tomorrow morning's task instead of tonight. Okay, so as we push into turn 13, I got my setup out there. And remember in Crusades game, when I ran the videos for that, it has the partial siege and the full siege. Well, I think we finally switched from a partial siege to a full siege. I've decided that it was impossible to get through with the forces that I had on the line particularly. So I've upped aiming for a lot more crossbowmen in the Crusader lines. But that means I've stretched things fairly thin through here. Now this is an interesting situation. I don't think the Crusaders want to launch an attack this turn. I think they want to do some bombardment. There isn't a lot of foss that got left filled over the turn. So it's not like they're losing much of anything. They might be able to knock down some more walls. Whoa. Oh, that's the rule book. It's got the mine sheet on the back. They might be able to get some more walls down if they kind of take their time on it. On the other hand, Saladin may think that this is a pretty strong signal. Now, all it really is that's what I want for my next assault, but sometimes things like that are a little jarring. More importantly, there's not a lot here. Maybe I can bust my way through in a way that I didn't before. A hard call. We'll see which way Saladin goes, but he may force an assault. It may not be a real assault, though. It could just be the destruction of Saladin's army if this stuff all turns and swings down. There's no guarantee that a Saladin attack necessarily does anything interesting, because the forces that are surrounding the city can always turn around and join the defenders of the outer works. Yes, some of them probably have to stay behind and defend some of the siege engines over here, but that's not that big a deal. So the real big deal here is there's only going to be one of the next, and there's only 4 turns total, wherein any significant pressure is put on the outer works. And well, if I choose to do it now and I don't get a victory out of it, then I never have it again. Of course, this is kind of like the we're going to execute you. It's not, I'm trying to remember the puzzle. Essentially, the prisoner decides that he's completely able to never be executed. He's told, we're going to execute you, you're not going to know what day it is. We're going to execute you on one day this month, but you're not going to know what day it's going to be that you're going to be executed. And so the prisoner figures, well, they can't leave it to the last day, because then I will know that is going to be the day. And therefore, they can't leave it to the second to the last day, and eventually cancels out every single day of the month that way. Well, they execute him on the 14th of the month, and obviously he didn't know. But yeah, similar to that though, unlike being executed here, once Saladin throws his force into play, that's the last time he gets to do it. And then the Crusader, whatever he has left from that, he's pretty much free to hit the city with almost entirely. Now, you could say, well, this setup is pretty damn weak. And it is. The thing is, if the Crusaders are just going to bombard, Saladin doesn't want to attack. Particularly, I think. I'm not sure. No, I'm really not sure. I mean, because it burns a turn for the Crusaders either way it goes, probably. I mean, the first attack that we had turned against the city rather well. I guess the feeling here is it may be to Saladin's advantage to let the Crusaders continue a bombardment too before he attacks, with the thought that if he attacks and the bombardment hasn't happened, he's just burning a turn of the Crusaders. Or potentially causing an assault, but with this weak setup, a significant amount of these have to pull back. But if he's declaring an attack when the Crusaders attack, is he burning more than a turn? Not that I can think of. Yeah, so I'm really not sure. So the real reason to attack at this point would be, geez, the Muslim city is really weak. I guess that's the only real reason to choose to attack. I don't feel like that's terribly the case, although, it's funny. With this heavier commitment, the Muslims went with kind of a balanced positioning through the city. I don't think they're going to be able to swing all their archers onto one side or the other. And that's what was able to drive the enemy away, was their real preponderance of archers. On the other hand, the Crusaders have a lot of archers. So here's the thing. If the Crusaders attack, they may have a pretty damn good chance of taking the city. What can I do about that? Well, things are kind of weak. So I'm thinking a Saladin's attack might be the best move at this point, simply to hurt the Crusaders more. First of all, bust in through here, get some advantage on these weak units, and then hit that main army, regardless of what the Crusaders are doing. If they're bombarding, well, I take that away. If they're assaulting, I probably take that away too, and force them to fight Saladin's army. Of course, that means I don't get to intervene again.